So welcome everybody. This is the Dublin, Ireland Salesforce Administrators User Group. We're going to be talking a lot about Summer 21 today. Today's agenda, we're going to do a few brief introductions and calendar and resources for the group. Promise to keep that short. Then we're going to talk about Summer 21 release readiness. We're going to take a look at quite a few features today. And then at the end, for a bit of fun, we're going to have a short quiz for those who want to stick around and some prizes for the winners of that quiz. I'm very happy to say we have a special guest amongst us today. That's Jess Burke on the call. Jess, if you want to wave, she's the Director of Product Readiness at Salesforce. Really happy that she's a regular with us and can answer some questions for folks. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jürgen Strattmann. I'm the group leader and instructor and program manager for Blue Wave here in Dublin. And I'm very happy to announce that we're bringing on another co-leader, Calvin Bright, who's on the call. I don't know if you have your camera on, Calvin, if you want to wave. Calvin's a Salesforce admin at Pexlify here in Dublin as well. If you want to get involved in our group, like I said, probably the first and best way to do that is through Chatter, our Chatter group. But you can also always reach out to me on LinkedIn or through Twitter. If you're interested to become a speaker or a sponsor, you want to suggest a topic for our group in the future, or you'd like to just share something you've learned, even if it takes 2 to 5 minutes, something like that's fine. Just reach out and we'll make sure that the group focuses on the things that these folks want to talk about. So please reach out. In terms of upcoming events, just wanted to make sure that people were aware of some of the exciting events on the horizon. So number one, Salesforce Certification Days. I think this is the 3rd time around for this program. It's a great program. If you go to trailhead.salesforce.com/credentials and then /cert-days, tons of free webinars to help you prepare for a whole list of certifications. And the best part is if you attend one of those completely free webinars, you get a voucher. And so that's, I think at the moment, $40 off of a $200 exam just for attending. So that's a really great program. It should be on everybody's radar. Then Check Dreaming next month. Registration for that event is still open if you're interested to check that one out. We have Trailhead DX just around the corner. So if you haven't already registered for that, I highly encourage you to do so. That event is for everybody, devs, admins, architects, partners, and IT leaders. You can easily find that at salesforce.com/trailheadx. Texas Dreaming, the end of June. And I've gone ahead and thrown Dreamforce 2021 on here. It's really interesting. I've seen just a few weeks ago in the San Fran Business Times, they were talking about finding ways to see that that goes ahead in person this year. So that's really exciting if that's possible, just something for us all to pay attention to. And we can do that through salesforce.com/Dreamforce or at Dreamforce on Twitter. But that would certainly be a welcomed change of pace for all of us, I think. All right, so I promised to keep it short. That was very short, but if anyone has any follow-up questions related to the running of the group or anything else, please do reach out to me. I think we're all here to talk about Summer 21, so let's get right into it. I'm going to start with our forward-looking statement. Not going to talk to you all about that. I think that is expected at this point. So key dates for Summer 21. Well, I actually pulled all these key dates from a blog posted by yourself, Jess. Would you like to walk us through this, or do you want to switch to a slide that you might have?
Hell no, I hate switching slides mid presentation. So let's just go with this one. This works well. Yeah. Right. So right now where we are in the release, the preview release notes are available. So that's where you want to deep dive into everything. If you're part of the Release Readiness Trailblazers community, or if you follow us on Twitter on the Salesforce Docs handle, we've been posting stuff like lots of the blog posts that are out there. There's more and more blog posts coming out every day from customers and MVPs. So they're always a great place to go if you just want to see a summary of the release notes. Tomorrow, May 6th at 6 p.m. Pacific time is the cutoff date for Sandbox Preview. So that means that your Sandbox has to be on a preview instance by 6 p.m. Pacific tomorrow if you want to get it onto the Summer 21 preview. that upgrading happens over the weekend, and then come Monday morning, I think it's Monday the 10th, you'll be able to see Summer 21 in your sandbox. Also this weekend, the release site goes live. That's something that release marketing run. They're the shiny people who kind of look at all the clouds and put together everything that that goes to the story of innovation within Salesforce. Then our first release weekend is May 15th. That's when we at Salesforce and maybe one or two other customers are still on those instances. That's when we get Summer 21. May 21st to 28th is when we do Release Readiness Live. That's a series of webcasts that I run with product managers, and that's where really you have the product managers tell you about their feature, give you the use cases, demo the stuff themselves, and then we also have a live Q&A via Twitter and the Trailblazer community. And then for most of us here in Europe, we start getting the actual release on the 4th of June, between the 4th and the 11th of June. That's when most people start getting the release.
Will I press on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And if folks aren't already using this Heroku app, sandbox-preview.herokuapp.com, gosh, that's a great way to be sure whether or not the instance you're looking at is going to be on a preview or not. And you can always jump from there right out to status.salesforce.com and see exactly when that instance gets upgraded and so on. So really helpful tool there.
And sorry, the great thing I'd say about that tool, Jorgen, is that as soon as the sandboxes get upgraded, not as soon, within about a week or so, we flip that tool over to Winter 22. So you don't have to wait till the sandbox preview instructions come out to get your sandbox on a preview instance. You can do it any time, and that tool will tell you when you need to do it by, what you need to do depending on, you know, whether you want to be on a preview or non-preview. So it's a really good tool. And just to frighten the life out of everybody, Sandbox Preview for Winter 22 is on the 28th of August, which is inhumane, I think.
Yeah. Well, fun stuff, fun year. Thanks for that, Jess. Thanks for, I didn't even know that the preview showed Winter 22 that early.
Yeah, crazy.
That's great. Okay, so with regards to the release notes themselves, if or when folks do decide to dig in, if you download that PDF, hopefully most folks aren't doing that these days, but if you are downloading the PDF, it's 580 pages. What we generally try to do on this group is we filter out the stuff that might be really specific, and so say commerce, development, Einstein, Experience Cloud, all that great stuff over there on the right. There's so much to cover in the release notes. What I always try to tackle in this group is the stuff that's gonna affect everybody. So what we'll be looking at today are things regarding Salesforce Overall, analytics, that's your reports and dashboards, customization to the platform, flow, mobile, and release updates, okay? That's kind of the thinking behind that anyway. If there's anything I don't cover or anything that you thought was really compelling that you want to mention to the group or discuss, we can certainly do that at the end. And just a little reminder, because there are quite a few beta services we're going to talk about today. You want to be a little careful in terms of how you plan with beta services. They're generally for, in Salesforce's own words, evaluation purposes only. They're as is and they're not supported. So in terms of planning out when you want to implement something in production, just be careful. I think folks are already generally aware of the pilot, beta, and then GA program, but just mentioning that since we're going to talk about so many betas today. All right, so getting into Salesforce Overall, you could probably guess this is where I'm going to start. It's probably one of the biggest ones in the release notes and something everybody should already kind of be thinking about. At the beginning of this year, Salesforce made an announcement of the future requirement for all customers globally to switch over to multi-factor authentication. So they announced that on February 1, and that's going to begin on February 1, 2022. So we're in under the year mark until that's required. Lot of helpful documentation on help.salesforce.com on this already. Probably the best place to start for anyone who's not yet had a chance to read or review this is a brief video that will explain a lot of the common question and answers around this program. That's called How MFA Works to Protect Account Access. The link to the video will be in this deck. What that video explains to us quite well is what multi-factor is and what it's not. It's not two-factor, right? Multi-factor is a bit of a different animal. So what will the user experience be once we're all on multi-factor? Well, in addition to logging into Salesforce the same way you always would from a browser or a mobile device with your username and password, you'll also need to provide a specific token through a device. Now that's either a Salesforce Authenticator mobile app, which is free to Salesforce customers, or a lot of the third-party apps. So think Google or Microsoft, which both of those are also free, third-party apps, or security keys. There are a lot of different security keys out there. Google has a security key, Apple has a security key, YubiKey is an example of a very famous security key, many of them out there. So these are all examples of what multi-factor is. What multi-factor is not is those email verification codes, a phone call that reads you a PIN number, or an SMS that includes a verification code. Those are considered to be a bit vulnerable. And so if you're already providing your email, you're providing your username and your password, they need something a bit more than that. That's the multi-factor part. So where do you go from here? Well, you're probably already seeing this little pop-up in your orgs when you log in, the admin notice it's time for MFA. If you punch that button to learn more about MFA, you'll start heading on your journey. You'll quickly find the PDF manual, MFA Quick Guide for Admins. Also native in Salesforce is an MFA assistant that'll walk you through evaluating your org, getting everything set up for MFA. I highly recommend folks to join the MFA Getting Started Trailblazer community group. You can ask questions there, see what other questions folks are asking. So great community-driven support. And another document, a framework for rolling out and supporting MFA. Started reviewing that myself, and I find that pretty helpful. So just letting everybody know, a lot of resources out there to make sure everyone's successful. Okay, now moving on to some of the features I think we're probably a little more familiar with in terms of one of the releases. We're starting in analytics, and the first one I want to point out, really short and easy one. This was previously in beta, and now it's GA. This is a highly in-demand item. When you add a new field, gosh, it'd be great if that was available in all of our existing custom report types. So that was previously in beta. It's now GA. And the only change to this that I want to point out is while it was in beta, in setup under report and dashboard settings, I believe it was, you could enable it. Now it's seamless. So when you create a new field, on the second step of that new field creation wizard, you have this checkbox auto add to custom report type. And if you tick that box, it puts that field into your custom report types. All right, so this is a really exciting one. No more do you have to print screen if you want to share around dashboard visualizations. Now there is a button in the dropdown that allows you to download an image only of the dashboard, and it'll grab all the elements of that dashboard. So really helpful for managers and C-suite folks who just want to get in, get a copy of those metrics, and get out again for a meeting or something. And this one, a beta, really, really exciting one, being able to edit information within the report run page. So folks have probably started to read something about this already. I have a couple comments on this one. Number one, you have to ask to have this feature activated. So step one, if you're interested in this while it's in beta, is actually to log a support case. After you log the support case and it's activated, you'll then see a new setting under your report and dashboard user interface settings and setup. Looks like this here, enable inline editing and reports for Lightning experience only. Then when you tick this org-wide setting, now you're able to kind of start messing around with this new feature. So since I actually did this, I logged a support case for a demo org that I have up today. I logged that support case last week. Unfortunately, they didn't get it activated in time. So rather than show you this, great question, Lisa, we'll get there. I'm going to defer to a Salesforce MVP, David Carnes, who got this activated a little bit earlier in his own org and had written up some notes. So there's a big page on Salesforce Help that talks about what this does and what it does not do in terms of the fields that are currently supported and so on. So I've cross-referenced David's experience with those notes, and I have just a couple comments. Being able to edit all field types is not possible right now. It's only a subset of field types which are available in beta: text, numeric, and checkboxes. Now, field level security, page layout, and record type restrictions are all enforced, okay? So you're not getting around any part of the security model in that regard. It works whether you have used a saved report, so a report that's already been saved to a folder or something, or you've just created a report, haven't saved it anywhere. It'll work in both cases. However, there are a few differences in terms of list views. So a key one, if you are used to editing records in a list view, is that you have to apply a record type filter in a list view before inline editing on that list view is possible. You don't have to do that with this feature currently. So you could have different record types all in different rows and edit them like that simultaneously. Although you can't multi-line edit right now, and you can in a list view. So that's probably why you're seeing that behavior the way you are. So it saves automatically when you put that in there, but you're not going to see it reflected in the report until you refresh. That's when you see any other related changes. And that leads me on to, this is a note directly from David's experience with regards to validation rules. I wish I could show you this in real time, but like I said, I just couldn't get it activated, might work fast enough. If I try to edit something that's going to violate a validation rule, what will happen is at the top of the page, you see in red that the field was not updated. So you're let know right away this field wasn't updated. And then on the field in the report, the validation rule error message, which you specified, appears. It allows you to correct. So say you edit a record and you want to change it to a status, but you've missed a field. It'll tell you you've missed a field, so you go back, update the field, and so on. Pretty straightforward, intuitive, very exciting. I think pretty much everyone on the call is excited for this one as it becomes available and more stable.
Jorgen, the only thing I'd say about that one is the biggest limitation in the beta is that it's single edits only. I know you said no multi-line, but it's not, as a beta, it's limited that you can only do single edits. So unless you really want to get a hold of this, you might be better off wait for the GA when you can do multiple inline edits, because I'd say it'd be unusual that anybody's just editing one field.
Thanks for that, Jacinta. I appreciate that. All right, so we'll move on into platform customization. This is a huge, huge chunk of today's presentation. So firstly, record access reasons in Lightning experience. So for folks that had previously been familiar with the capabilities in Classic, I apologize for still referencing Classic, but this kind of came in two stages, you know, or maybe even three, because previously, for the last, say, two odd years, we could install a Salesforce Labs extension that allowed us to basically do everything that you could do with the manual share button, including be able to see reasons that, you know, why did folks have the access that they have to a record. This was rolled out as a part of the general platform over time, and this is the part of the last piece of that. So we have this new button on a record now called Sharing Hierarchy, and what this does is it exposes a table like I have on screen here, which gives the full list of everyone that has access to the record, the reason for their access, the relationship, and their, you know, it goes on. So if you had access to be able to edit child cases, opportunities, contacts, and so on, you can see that here as well. Very much needed. All right, a few slides dedicated to this one, and it's a little bit irregular that I would put something that's more focused on programmatic change in our deck. We try to keep it more focused on admins and declarative, but I thought this one was so important that everyone should be aware of it. restriction rules, which is in beta, so it's just emerging, is the first time I'm aware of, as long as I've worked in Salesforce some odd last 10 years, that we actually have a new tool in our tool belt to control what people can see and do. So effectively how they explain it is you have your org-wide defaults, which we all know and love. That's how you start to close down access. And then through all the other declarative mechanisms we know, sharing rules, hierarchy, manual sharing teams, and the rest, we can expand on that access. Now with restriction rules, we can then fine tune and take access away again. So how does this work? Well, I think everybody's probably familiar with this pyramid. It's how we've always understood baseline object permissions. You start with your OWD, you can open it up with hierarchy, you can open up further with sharing rules, and then you have manual sharing teams and the rest for exceptions. With restriction rules, we can then refine and hide again all over some level of those records, okay? So that's why I think that's such a big deal in the case that you want to say override the default baked in access because of a master detail relationship between parent and children, or because of something to do with the complexity and hierarchy or sharing rules that are already available in the org. If none of the currently available declarative tools work, and I think they will 99% of the time, but we've now got this Swiss Army knife in our back pocket. To implement something like this, you have to do it through an API. So metadata or tooling API is the only way to do this. If you're not familiar with working with the APIs, you've never touched VS Code or the like, then you may have to defer to a programmer on your team to help you with this. But this is an example of what this would look like. So we can instantiate a restriction rule in XML. We can say what it's for, who it's related to. Here you can see the filter. So we want to exclude this record type, and we want to exclude it from this profile. So it's really, really compelling, I think. Okay, moving right along, visibility rules. Well, I think we all are aware of visibility rules at this point. Folks are probably using them quite often, I imagine now, to enhance their dynamic forms. Something that's come along in this release is the respect to those visibility rules in create, edit, and clone screens. This is massive because what it means is if you have fields, users should be able to say edit or read or the rest, but you don't want them to see it on a new screen, very common requirement I get from customers. You can put them in an accordion component, apply visibility rules, and they disappear from the new screen. And I have an example of that here where I have a new invoice record. I just clicked the new invoice button, so I put nothing on it yet. And I have a section for collections, which is, after the invoice has been issued and then payments are coming in and so on. So I've put collections in an accordion component. I've applied visibility rules to it to pay attention to the invoice status. Here's the exact same record. All I did was add visibility rules, and I click the new button again. And now the collection section is gone. Pretty cool. Now, what I've noticed so far from using this, I haven't beat it up too extensively. If I meet the requirements of the visibility rules, those sections don't seem to come back in the create screen. But after I create the record, if it meets the visibility rule, the section does come back on the view screen. Yeah, that's a great question. Is it for custom objects? Or is it for, I think it's everywhere that dynamic forms are. So I know that there are some restrictions in terms of standard objects, and I'm sure that those restrictions are still in play. That's a great question. All right, so there's also this new Lightning component for your app page. So if you're designing custom app pages, and the example here is for accounts, so you want this nice landing page and you've dragged on some list views and the rest, you now have this component called a dynamic actions bar, and you can drag that onto your app page, and it's a convenient place for you to list any of those actions that work for that object. Okay. Now this is in pilot. I'll just point that out as compared to beta. It's a little earlier in the process. All right, this is a pretty interesting one because again, these are the kinds of limits you don't see change too often. So that's why I think they definitely should get a mention in our conversation. The total hard limit for custom objects or for custom fields per object has been increased. Now in the release notes, it says 900, but what they're talking about there is with respect to the existing 800 custom field limit in Unlimited Edition. So what this means is that you have a little wiggle room in terms of the number of fields you can install from a managed package. If you have 800 custom fields created on an object in Unlimited Edition, you can then go above that by 100 fields of installed fields on the same object. So what's a little unclear to me, and I don't want to pass around bad information, I would guess that that you still have the same limit on Enterprise Edition, which is 500 custom fields, but you can go above that with managed package fields, probably by a similar limit up to 600 or so. I haven't had a chance to explore this in more detail, but I thought that this was definitely worth a mention.
Yeah, I pinged the writer on Slack for this, so I've asked them to put an update in because not everybody has UE, so I think it needs to be clarified for other editions how it works too.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay, another one in beta, really compelling one, is the ability to provide an expiration when you assign permissions. So if you imagine you have a permission set group, say you have a permission set group for the accounting department that allow them to do things like modify invoices, and someone's out sick and you need to give somebody else those permissions for a day or a week or so, and yeah, you don't want them long-term to have those permissions, you can now apply an expiration date, and then when you provide the time zone, exactly down to that time zone, it will enforce that from the time you give them those permissions. And after such and such a point, they lose their permissions again. Okay, so we'll move on to Flow then. Another huge section in the release notes. Before we even get into the features of Flow, we've also been introduced to Einstein Automate. This is something that's been rolling out for a few months. We've got a lot of information about Einstein Automate. In fact, I believe it was mentioned at Dreamforce 2020. So I think that might be the first time that we really started hearing a lot about this. If you were looking for information about Flow in the Summer 21 release notes, you'd have to look under Einstein Automate. So people notice that they've moved in the release notes. And they've been situated into a larger family of platform tools. Einstein Automate brings together the pre-built solutions with AI-infused automation that we all know about, and also the integration workflows. So MuleSoft Composer's in there, Omni Studio, Einstein Recommendation and Next Best Action, Einstein Bots, Salesforce Flow, and the Flow Orchestrator, which is in pilot, by the way. And then Salesforce Industries is all under this umbrella. Why that's really interesting and compelling is when you look at the roadmap of the enhancements that are being made to Salesforce, you see that a lot of those tools are starting to be blended together for maximum impact, right? So you see things like Flow being able to reach out to Next Best Action and being able to reach out to MuleSoft Actions and the rest to allow us a single drag and drop interface, Flow Builder, to be able to create integration and automation workflows, harnessing the power of everything under Einstein Automate. This is a really exciting emerging space to watch. Now, I actually stole this screen grab from a recent series I would highly recommend to everyone called the Awesome Admins Automate with Salesforce Flow series on Trailhead Live. These 3 sessions have already passed, so you can watch the recordings whenever you want. I'll put the link to those recordings with this deck. But it's a great moment for each of us to check in and see what's possible with Flow now, the direction things are heading in. This was from the 3rd in this series, where Alex, who's the Senior Director Product Manager for Process Automation at Salesforce, steps in to talk about the team's vision, where things are going. So really compelling series of episodes. Highly recommend folks to check that out if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Flow and where that's going. So for flow specifically in this release, or for those of us who are now starting to pay attention to API versions, API version 52, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about now won't be possible unless you upgrade your current flows or create new flows. We now have the ability to create multi-column screens in Flow. That was previously in beta. The isChanged function, super helpful function for us, is available in condition logic for start and decision elements now. I know this is something that comes up very often for us when we're automating. Maybe we only want to do something with a record when it's brand new. Well, how do we know if it's brand new, or how do we know if a field has changed? Well, now we have the ability to use the isChanged in our condition logic. We also can leverage isChanged, isNew, and prior value in our formula fields. Okay? So those two things combined give us a lot more power to choose when things run and so on. Setting a default value for any screen component. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Controlling whether or not pick lists on those screens are required. Switching between choice components when building flow screens. Placing fields from a Salesforce object directly on flow screens, so not having to recreate those. I'll show you that too, very compelling. Sorting and limiting the total amount of data in a collection. So if you create a collection variable in a flow, you have a lot more control over that collection with this new element. I'll show you that too. Creating scheduled paths. Scheduled paths aren't new, but being able to create them in the auto layout is. So it's expanding that functionality to the new auto layout. Preview more flow screen components, directly update fields and record triggered flows, flow accessibility enhancements, flows on a larger auto layout canvas. So they're just resizing that, making it more user friendly, and conditional visibility on flow screens at a glance. So this is just what's changed in the flow builder for summer 21. Massive amount of stuff. And then we also have a lot of enhancements to debugging. But again, pay attention to your API version because flows are API specific now. So if you have an existing flow and you want to leverage some of these new pieces of functionality, you may have to upgrade your flow. Okay, so you can now debug record triggered flows, find failed flows faster. We'll show you where that is in the logs. Debug flows after pause elements, debug a flow to see when transactions are committed. You can debug flows within the auto layout. So again, extending some of that functionality if you choose the auto layout option. Updates to how flow error messages are reflected in emails. And just the process of debugging flows has been made more seamless with one button click. So for sake of time, I didn't have the option to go and create all of these things as a real world example, but there is a great post on this already, which I'll highlight. So most of you on this call are probably already familiar with Salesforce MVP Jen Lee. And Salesforce Flow is really one of her domains of expertise. She also co-hosts a Salesforce Automation Hour. I highly encourage you to check out her website, at least for checking out the great recent post she did on Summer 21 Flow enhancements. So she's done a few great examples for us. So I'm just going to show you these examples. The first one, coming from beta to GA, is option for us to create a multi-column screen, which you can see she's done here. The next one is how we incorporate isChanged in condition logic for the start element. So what she's done, she's actually dragged on a decision element, and then she comes down here and just says, you know what, I want to use that new isChanged operator. So she's choosing a random variable, the record status, and you can see that she's able to choose isChanged as an operator now. So that's new, gives us a lot more power in those start and decision elements. You can also use isChanged, isNew, and prior value in Flow formulas. So if you edit a formula in Flow, you can see here that it'll now respect that function. So she has an example of basically the same logic isChanged for record status, but in a Flow formula here. All right, so with regards to pick lists, we have an example where we've provided a default value. And we also have an example where if you click on a component for a pick list, you can see you now have the option to make that pick list mandatory. This required attribute was missing before this release. This is a really interesting one. I think this is going to save admins a massive amount of time. Now you see when you're creating a screen, you have this new tab, Fields, and when you tell this tab which object you're pointing to, you can actually drag and drop fields that map with the same data type and everything else. And what she's done here is she's chosen the object case, and then she's quickly just grabbing fields directly from the case and dropping them onto the screen. She can see all of the attributes in read-only mode for those fields. Here she provides the object based on the record variable, and then she's just dragging fields on based on that object. So saves us a massive amount of time. All right, so this is a really interesting one. This is a new element, the collection sort element. It allows us to apply logic in terms of the S-object collections that we create. Not only can we sort them, but we can limit the number of records that are put into them. So here she's grabbed that element. She does that quite quickly, that new element. She says she wants to sort her cases. She puts in her variable, that's her collection variable, and then she can just start applying the filters on how she wants it sorted. And you can imagine this similar to Excel. First, I want to sort by this column, and then this column, and then this column. So she's done by created date, and then she's done by status, and then she does by case number, and so on. Okay. Really helpful if you want to return something on screen to end users to have them review it. Okay, that was just a few examples. Now I'll point you to the Salesforce admin blog and show you how much discussion about Flow has occurred just in the last 30 days, right? If you're interested in Flow or in learning about any of these new features, I highly recommend you go over to the admin blog. On the 28th, they talked about how you can leverage Flow for displaying available campaigns on an opportunity. On the 20th, they looked at how Flow can help you populate sandboxes. On the 13th, we were looking at how you could leverage pre-built flows for common use cases. And on the 7th, we were all about documentation for Flow. If you don't want to read, if you'd prefer to listen, the Salesforce Admins podcast also has done quite a few features recently on Flow. And here again is Jen Lee, our Salesforce MVP, talking about automation, Mark Ross on Flow documentation, and Sam for Flow automation. So a lot of very, very recent resources for us if you want to follow up on anything specifically. Okay, mobile. So a few updates here in mobile that I think are really interesting. And for folks who, maybe you don't get a use case for mobile all the time, it's important that we stay up to date. Now, in a previous release, Mobile Home for iOS was beta. Now in this release, Mobile Home for Android is beta. So now we've got it for both of our key strategic devices, iOS and Android. Now, what is Mobile Home and what does it allow you to do if you haven't had a chance to mess with it yet? You can see here on the left is an example of Mobile Home when I log into Salesforce mobile app. And it's all these little cards that sort for me the information that I care most about. And it's unique to me. So if I move the cards around or remove or change what the information is showing me, it will only show those changes to me. Very similar to how you might customize your ribbon in Salesforce, the navigation menu. You can view your reports, upcoming events, recent records, and you can quickly, as a user, control those cards, rearranging, adding, and removing cards within the app. So just a really helpful way for end users to get the most out of the mobile experience. Another one that's now in pilot is getting the most out of the iPad screen by allowing full width view of Lightning on a tablet. So this experience allows users with a tablet full screen to display the desktop version of record detail pages. So if you've got the Lightning pages and it supports desktop and mobile and you want to see the desktop version, you can do that on a tablet now in beta. Okay, and release updates, these pesky little buggers that are always kind of behind the scenes and they're counting down and things are turning on. I want to point out just a few of these. I talked briefly about enabling my domain in some of our previous meetups. So just a friendly reminder for anyone who is working in an org that doesn't have a my domain, or you're talking to a lot of clients, making sure that they all have their my domain. This is enforced from Winter 22, which is the next release. So the time is winding down. If you don't take any action, the world won't end, but Salesforce will auto-create a domain for you. And depending on whether or not you've hard-coded any URLs or anything else in your application, some of those things may experience a difference in behavior. So definitely want to look into that. Now we have a new update, which is enhanced domains. So this is newly announced in this release, and it'll be enforced a year from now. To use enhanced domains, what we're really talking about is routing through the Salesforce Edge network. The long and short of this is allowing folks who are using sites to be able to download and work with those pages more efficiently. So you can read more about the Salesforce Edge network. I've included a link here. Just want to put this on everyone's radar. You can go in and enable this whenever you want, enhanced domains, but it will be required for all customers globally next summer, in summer 22. Okay, the only other one from the release updates I'm going to mention right now is the change to local formats. So Salesforce is making the jump from JDK 8, which they've been on for a while, to the new ICU format. They're just standardizing, right, across different web applications. This is the standard. What this means is that as of January 31st, 2022, so you still have a little over a year, all the various dates, times, currencies, and numeric values in Salesforce are going to adhere to the ICU local format rather than JDK 8. Means that things might look different. So certain symbols might change, commas and decimal points might change, and there's a lot of documentation to help you go out and compare. The first thing that they recommend in the release notes is to run this helpful query. So they've written it for you in SOCL to see by user group who's using locales in your org. You know, if everyone's on one locale, it means you've only got one locale that you're really responsible for figuring out if there's going to be any changes. However, if you've got users across different locales, you want to figure out who they are and then start working through those locale changes. You can enable this in a sandbox, make sure there's not going to be any major impacts. I guess for most folks, this is a very minor change, but you definitely want to look into this. I know some clients who definitely would want to be aware of these changes in advance. So here you go. You're notified a year and a half ahead of time. Okay, so we have a quiz shortly, and I know we have about 10 minutes left to the hour. Gosh, I did my best to get through some of the most important things, but at lightning speed, I realize. I'm going to go through the chat now and just see if there's any questions I might have missed. And in the meantime, feel free to take yourself off mute if there's anything that you thought was really compelling that I didn't cover here, or any questions that you have or so on. Now's the time to speak up.
I just wanted to clarify, Jürgen, Dream Ola is not happening. It was cancelled.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they
Yeah.
didn't update the site, but they refunded the tickets we bought 2 years ago. So I found the email. I wasn't sure, but now I found the email that they're saying that it will not happen. So 2022, that's why the registration is open for spring 2022, but nothing will happen on Friday, unfortunately.
I see. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah. They're in the Salesforce events calendar and everything. So yeah. Thank you for that.
It happened like 3 days ago. On the April 13th, they were starting, so a little bit more.
I'm sure we can all understand. Yeah, this whole year and last year has been a big question mark for everybody. So yeah, thanks, Justina.
No worries.
Okay. Well, it looks like a lot of people are just excited about a lot of the new functionality, so that's great. A few people wanted to know about the material, so just for late joiners, this deck and the recording will be in our chatter group afterwards. So if you're a member of the Dublin admin Salesforce user group, you can find all those materials there. So for updates, this is a good question. So for updates to mobile, do users need to upload the app via App Store, or I think you mean upgrade the app via App Store, or does it refresh? Well, that depends on the settings of the phone. So generally when you install that, if you say installed it for yourself, like I have on my phone, I've got a lot of those things from the App Exchange auto updating. But if you're using Android as an example, I have a lot of clients on Android who create a little, I'm going to get the terminology wrong here, but like a briefcase, and they can actually specify for their end users, I want end users to use a Salesforce app and I only want them to use this version. In that case, if the IT department is controlling what version everyone's using a Salesforce on their phones, then they would have to force upgrade that version. Eric, I have a trial preview org for this release and I reached out to support to enable inline editing, but I was told this morning that this feature is not available on trial preview. Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's why they took so long for me, Eric. They haven't arrived at that conclusion yet, but yeah, I experienced similar issues in getting that enabled.
Yeah, Eric, is it a pre-release org you have, like a GS0 org?
I assume so. I'm not sure. Like I just registered for a trial preview org. Like it just says trial org.
No.
Like so many days remaining.
So you'd probably have to have a pre-release org. Pre-release happened like I think the 14th of April. A GS0 org, but if it's a trial org, they wouldn't enable features on any trial orgs. But if it's a pre-release org and they didn't enable it, which I'm guessing is what you had, Jorgen, it may be that it's only available on a sandbox org template.
How do you know if it's a GS0? I think that's what you called it.
Yeah, when you log into it, it'll have GS0 in the URL string.
Let me try that now.
Yeah, just what server it's sitting on. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, it very well may be that next week we can just go into a sandbox and take a look. Up until now, it might not have been possible. Anyone else have any other? Well, I guess I'll ask generally. I know that it's still a little early days, right? Because the preview doesn't officially begin until this weekend. For anyone who's had a chance to look into the release notes, is there anything else that you were really excited about that was missed from this summary?
Yeah, hi, it's Michael here, Jürgen. Just one quick thing on the admin podcast. Would definitely recommend to anyone to check out the podcasts. They're actually really good to listen to, particularly the flow ones that you mentioned.
Yeah,
they're really informative because there is a lot of changes that have been made to the flow builder. So it's definitely those three ones that you referenced are a really good starting point. For people that don't want to go through the release notes, it's a good one to check out.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'll just add, I was a little surprised to see how much material in such a short period of time is coming onto the blog. It's all great material, but you can really tell that there's a lot going on in that space. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think I can provide a bit of color on that since we don't have many questions. What the Flow team are trying to do is kind of lower the barrier to entry for admins who've been using Process Builder and Workflow. So kind of we're continuing to march down the list of those features, and is changed was the number one thing that was blocking migration to Flow for a lot of people. And then there's other features like auto layout that are making it easier to understand how to add something that you can go in immediately and successfully update a field. So a lot of it is about the fact that, Flow was difficult for a lot of people. And, all the focus is on simplifying. And if you saw that slide about when Alex did the roadmap part of that session, it's all working towards having one builder in the future. So there won't be multiple builders, there'll just be one for everything.
Thanks for that. Yeah, that's really helpful. You can see in the long-term roadmap that they're going to be providing assistance for migrating from workflow rules and process builders to Flow. So it'll be interesting to see in that space what we might see there next year.
So Eric says his org is GS0. So what that means probably, Eric, is that the pre-release template doesn't have the inline editing beta. It may be that it's only available for sandboxes. That regularly happens.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, I think it's time we try a little fun here. So with just 5 minutes left, we'll go for a little quiz. So I've put up some details of the quiz. I'll just talk you through it really fast, and then we'll do it as a group. If you haven't used PollEV before, you just go to pollev.com / and the name of our group is Dublin IE, and then S0 for or 54, S054. So I'll leave this up for a moment. If on a separate tab or on a separate screen you want to go to this link. In order to be eligible for a chance to win from this quiz, I do need you to put in your name. If you're anonymous, I won't be able to reward you, of course. Yeah, Louison, I can type that into the chat. Good idea. That's the link there. So take a chance, migrate over there, and we'll just ask a few fun questions about what we talked about today, and then give out some prizes. Okay, so let me pull this up here. So I'll give everyone a moment to find your way into the quiz. So no reason to feel rushed there. Now this quiz will have a timer on it, okay? So what that means is once we begin as a group, there's no going back. Each question you have about 15 seconds to respond. Well, not about, you have 15 seconds to respond. I'll tell you when it's multi-choice or when it's single answers, just because this is kind of the first time I'm doing it as well. And I'll read the questions with you so you can read the questions before the timer starts, okay? So hopefully everybody who's going to participate has now gone to the link and has entered their first and last name. All right, so question 1, timer hasn't started yet. Question 1, which is the first Summer 21 GA release weekend? Okay, so the timer started. You have 15 seconds. Shoot from the hip. See what you remember. Excellent. Okay, let's just see how everyone did. Excellent. Well, that is the right answer, May 15th. Let's just take a look at our leaderboard. All right. Jess, you got that one right.
Yeah, I'm just playing along for the fun of it. I'm obviously not going to win a prize, but I'm just playing along for the fun.
Sure, the harm would come if you got one wrong, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, that could still happen.
All right, let's go for the next one. So, which protocol is not allowed in MFA and multi-factor? So we're looking for something that's not allowed in multi-factor. 15 seconds. Okay. Excellent. Okay, nearly everyone got this one right. That's good. And has it changed our leaderboard? A little bit. Yeah. Okay, Paul and Eric at the top. Which Summer 21 feature is in beta? Okay, actually, I think folks did pretty well. I'm trying to throw you a couple of more difficult questions. And yeah, great job, everybody. That is expirations and permission set group assignments. All right, good job, Paul. And what about restriction rules? Ooh, this might be a tough one. Restriction rules, which is currently in beta, is not available for everything. So in this list, what is it not available for? Okay, out of time. Now this was, I think, probably the hardest question in the group of questions. I did write this on the slide, but I didn't talk about it, so it's kind of a harder one. All right, so cases was the correct answer. Cases is what it's not allowed for. So what that means is everything else on there is allowed. Woohoo! You can use restriction rules on all custom objects, on contracts, on tasks and events. Okay. All right. And I believe this is our last question. Mobile home for iOS, which is GA, and Android, which is now in beta, summer 21, allows you to do what? Take your time. Very hard question. This is a positive question. So what does it allow you to do? And you can choose more than one answer. Okay. Add, remove, and rearrange cards is correct, but so is view reports and view recent records. Okay, let's see how we did. All right, Paul, well done. I'm just going to write down our winners here. Paul and
I'd like to thank my parents.
Did you find that fun?
Yeah, that was really good.
Very good.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
a
very
good
good.
guesser. That was a complete fluke.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen now. Now, Jess, you're a winner to me, but
I just
for Paul,
yeah, I got at least 2 of them wrong, so I have to go back and revisit that.
For Paul, Eric, and Puneet, our top 3 winners, I'll follow up with you in the group and award you all certification vouchers. So I'll follow up with you after this, and really thank you for sticking around. I hope you found the quiz fun, and I hope everyone found the session helpful. And with that, we are over time, so you're welcome to head off. If anyone wants to stick around, I'm happy to stay and have some conversation. But for those who need to get going, off to work or to make dinner and take care of the kids, whatever you've got going on, it was nice to have you with us at the Dublin admin group, and I hope you'll return soon.